In this video, we are going to talk about maps in Java. So, what is a map? A map is a data type composed of a collection of key value pairs. So, this part here is of the utmost importance with maps, right? It's kind of like the ordered pair that you talk about in math class, right? And then it's two things, right? And the order matters. And the first part of the ordered pair is referred to as the key, and the second part is referred to as the value. So for every key, right, there is some value that you have. A map is also called an associative array. So if we think about what an array is, right, it's basically a list of things, and each list has an index, right, associated with it, and that index is an int, right? The first one is 0, right? The next index is 1, and the next index is 2, and so on and so forth. And that's how we access things that are stored in the array, right, through the index. And so for an array, it has to be an int. There's no, you don't get to choose anything else. So for a map, you can actually use a different data type than int, right, to index your values. For instance, you can use a string, right? So down here is an example of a map, and the keys in this case would be strings. The values would be ints. Okay, in this case, or actually, it has to be integer for map. So that is one of the nice things about maps, is that you can store things using strings or access things using strings instead of ints like in an array. Okay, and so here, if you look at this example that I have, there's 3 key value pairs, right? So this is the first key value pair, right? The key would be Bob, the value is 5, and the second key value pair here, the key would be Dan, and the value would be 7. And here, the third key value pair, the key would be Jan, and the value would be 3. Okay, so that's what a map is. It's a collection of key value pairs. One of the benefits of using a map is that data can be quickly inserted and retrieved using maps, and they are extensively used in large database systems where you have incredible amounts of data. Using a relational database, would slow things down too much, and so different systems are used, like we talked about in the section on databases. Okay, we want to talk about the four fundamental map operations: add, reassign, remove, and lookup. And these are just routine things that you would need to do if you want to use a map in your program. So first thing is add, and that's just simply to add a new key value pair to the collection. Reassign, that is to change the value of one of the key value pairs that's in the map. Remove is to remove a key value pair from the collection. And lookup is to find the value for a given key. Okay. One thing I think I glossed over here, and that's important, is that each key has to appear at most once in the collection. Okay, so you can't have two key value pairs with the same key but different values in there. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at examples of these 4 fundamental operations. So here I have a map. How it would you can think about it conceptually, right? You have your keys and then the associated values. So basically like a little table that you could look up things in. So you look up the keys in here. So we want to add this key value pair to the map, the string Ada, right, and the int value 6. And so once you do that to the map, then you would just have another key value pair in your map. So you've added a new key value pair to the map. One thing about these maps is that the key value pairs aren't in any particular order. So you may think that way, for instance, like you would with an array list or something like that, or a list of values. But you can't quite think of it in those terms. It's just there's not a definitive order in which those key value pairs are kept for most implementations. There are some where they will order them, but we won't talk about those in this class. All right, next up is the reassign operation, and that's just where you change the value of an existing key value pair. So here we want to reassign 8 to 9. So before that operation, our map would look like this, and then we're just going to change that 6 to a 9, like so. So that's the reassign operation. Removing a key value pair, that's just simply where an entire key value pair would be removed right from the map. So if the map looks like this initially, then we want to remove the key value pair Dan7 from the map. Then this is what it would look like after that operation is completed. So you can see this entire key value pair has been completely removed from the map. All right, and then the lookup example, that is just simply given a key, find the value associated with that, if there is one, right, in the map. So here, if we were given the key Jan, we would look that up and say, okay, the value corresponding to that is 3. So that's the lookup. All right, so Java provides a map interface, and let's take a look at the documentation for map, and we can see it here. Here we have the map interface, and it is a generic type, just kind of like the array list, where you need to tell what types of objects are stored in the map. And in this case, you have two. You have the keys, right, and the values. So when you declare this, you have to tell Java, what's the type of the keys, and what type are you using for the values in there. Those have to be objects. You can't use primitive types. Just like with array list, you would have to use a wrapper type. So for int, it would be integer. For double, it would be capital D, double with a capital D, right, and so on and so forth. Okay. So here's the interface, and we can see that some of the methods that we have down here, and so the first operation that we talked about was the add, and that is done through the put method right here. So put a key value pair into the map, right? And then remove is for the remove operation. And then reassign, right, operation would be done with the replace key. And then finally, to look up a value associated with a key, it would be the get method over here. Okay. So that is the map interface, and with the 4 basic methods, you can see there's a lot more to it than that, and we will talk a little bit more about some of that. All right. So let's take a look at a first example. There's a lot of classes that implement the map interface, but we're only going to talk about hash map. And you can see all the classes that implement that, right? So you can see there's lots of them in here, but we are going to talk about this one in particular, the hash map. Oops, wrong one. All right, so let's talk about this first. First off, to use map, you need to import java.util, and then it would be map and hash map are the classes that we actually need. All right, and line 7, I am creating, right, a new hash map. And so over here on the right hand side, I am using the constructor for the hash map class. And you might notice over here on the left hand side, right, I am using just map. And so that is the name of the interface. If you do things this way, right, use the name of the interface over here and the name of the concrete class over here, the class that implements that interface, right, then that makes it really easy to change this implementation right here. In other words, say you may be you're writing your program and you decide, hey, I don't want to use hash map anymore. I want to use one of these others like tree map, okay, instead of that. And so you can easily change your code and adjust it that way if you make this of the map type, okay. Um, Again, the hash map class and the map interface are parameterized. They're generic types, so you have to use the parameters. You have to tell what the type of the keys are. In this case, the keys are strings, and the values are integers. And so this is just the one that I showed you in the example here. Same thing here. So here I'm calling the constructor of hash map. The name of our map is map, and here again is the new thing that I've shown you where we are using the interface name instead of the concrete class name. It's a very similar thing with list and array list. So in Java 1 we didn't really talk about that, right? Because we didn't really know about interfaces or anything like that. So now when you declare array lists, you can do so like this. There's an interface called list, right? And array list is one of the classes that implement that is a concrete class, not abstract. So you can actually declare your array lists like this now. And again, it's a little bit more flexible if you want to change this type over here, and you've written your code with using the interface type. Then there's really not much you have to change other than this right here. Okay. So that is new to Java 2 here. Okay, so in this line, we are creating our map, and then we want to populate it. So let's see if we can run this in Canvas and just kind of see what it looks like at the same time. So Control-Shift-R. I haven't tested this out, so hopefully it looks okay. So when we create our map, it looks like that. So far it doesn't look great, but let's go ahead. So now what we want to do is to add some key value pairs into our map, right? And so we would do that with here, the name of the map is map.put. The put method, right, will add this key value pair into that. So if I click this, it just says size 1. That's not good. Let's see if we can drill down a little bit more into there. Actually, we probably can. I guess that's about as good as we're going to get. All right, so... Oh, wait, key value. There we go. All right, that's what I want. All right, so now we can see, right, we have that key value pair in our hash map, or map, whatever you want to call it. All right, and so here we're just going to add some more in there. All right, so you can see we have these key value pairs in there now. So I want to print these out. So if I use println, you can see that those are printed out like so. All right, so really easy to print out a map. Just use system.out.println. All right, next up is reassigning a value. So that's done through the replace method. So here I want to replace the value of Ada with 9. It's currently in here with a 6, and I want to replace it. So you can see after I do this line, it will update, right? And it will have the value 9 in there. All right, next up I want to remove the key value pair that begins with Dan. Remember, for every key can only appear once, right, in a map, and so you don't have to tell it the value. You just tell it the key that you want to remove, and we're going to see that, boom, right, it removes it out of here. We can print it out again. All right, sometimes you will want to test to see whether or not a map contains a key before doing something. And so you can use this method, contains key, and that will return a Boolean value, either true or false. In this case, right, map.contains key Tom will return false, right, because there is no key value pair in our map with a key of Tom. So you're going to see we're going to false right there. Next up, we want to test to see whether or not there's a key Bob, right, in a key value pair with a key of Bob in our map, and there is, so this will return true. You can see there. All right. And I did gloss over this part about getting map.get. That will get the value associated with a particular key in here. Okay. So it's pretty straightforward, right, on this implementation here. All right, let's take a look at a couple of examples. Let's say that I misspell this, right, and so there's not a key in there with Ada with two A's on the end. Okay, and you can see that ran fine, right? It didn't really cause any issues when I told it to replace in there. It didn't do any of that replacing, right? The key was wrong, and there was no key value pair in the map with this particular key, so it just ignored it. Here I'm asking it to remove a key value pair, right, where there is no key value pair in the map with this key, and you can see that that was fine as well, so that's not going to mess up anything. And now I'm going to ask to get the value associated with the key of Jana, which is not in there. And you can see I got this null value here. Okay, so that could potentially cause some issues, right, in your program. You might think that that the value that was returned out of there is initialized. You got the value correctly out of there, but if you there's no key in there with that name, it's going to return a null value. So sometimes that null value will cause issues, right, if it creeps in your program, and that's one of the ways it can creep in there is trying to get out the value of a key value pair where there's no key in the map as well. So all right, and again, you can always use this contains key to test for that before you do that. All right, so those are the basics of the hash map. And now let's turn to something a little bit more complicated, and that is iterating over hash maps. Or maps. So that's a pretty common task to have to do. You want to look through all the pairs for whatever reason, key value pairs. And so there are basically three ways that you can do that. Number one, you can iterate over all the keys. You can iterate over all of the values, or you can do both. Okay. And so we're going to look at this next bit of code here, this hash map iteration. All right, so this is what it looks like. And running through this, you can see my hash map is, I'm going to create a map, right? And then I am going to put these key value pairs in there. And then here I iterate over all the keys first, then I iterate over all the values, then I iterate over all the key value pairs. So it just depends on what you need to do as to which of these things, which of these methods that you would use. But here you can see this is what the map looks like, and then you can see, okay, I iterated over all the keys, Bob, Dan, Jan, Ada. I iterated over all the values, right? And now you can see that the values, right, how those were entered were 7, 5, 3, 6, right? When you might think, hey, why shouldn't it be 5, 7, 3, 6? So I told you before, right, the order is kind of unpredictable in here. You might think it goes in the order in which you put them in there, like an array list does, right? but you can't guarantee that with a map. Okay. All right. Then here at the bottom, I iterate over all key value pairs. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So the first thing, right, is iterating over the keys. And you can see here I use a new class called set. Okay. Set, again, is a generic type, so it has a parameter in here. You have to tell it what the type of the keys is. So this, right, this class, the first class in the parameters, class parameters here should match, right? All right, this class set is part of something called the Java Collections Framework. Okay. And so the Java Collections Framework is a bunch of interfaces and implementations. Okay. And as the name implies, collections, right, is just a group of a bunch of things, objects, right, that you are manipulating. All right. And there's lots of different ways in computer science that you will do that, or that you need to do that in order to write efficient programs. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that you will probably talk about in data structures if you take that class. Okay, so the collections framework has all of these collections, or these interfaces right here, and we've been talking about the map interface. Okay, and then down below here you'll see some general purpose implementations. So these are concrete classes that you can create objects from, right? These are interfaces, so you can't create objects from them, right? But hash map, right, is what we were working with now. And so here you can create a bunch of different types. And another one that you should recognize is array list, right? Array list is something that we talked about in Java 1. That is an implementation of this list interface, like I told you there previously. Okay. And so again, we're not going to go too deep into this, but in data structures, I'm sure that you will. But set is also a part of the interfaces in the collections framework, and it's like a math set. Okay. And so in a math set, you don't have duplicate elements; they're not permitted. So when I use the get keys, or key set method is what it's called. Right here, you can see it returns a set object. Okay, and so that's really all that we're going to use it for, right? And so what we would do is call this map.keySet and store it in a value in a variable, right, of type set, and then whatever the type of the keys are in the particular map. In this case, it's string. All right, and once you have that, then you can just iterate over that collection, right, using the enhanced for loop like this. Okay. All right. You can use a regular for loop as well. There's probably size is the method to get the size of the set, I would imagine. All right, so that's how to iterate over the key set, over the keys. Next up is to iterate over the values. And so the method in the map class that you call, or hash map, or whatever implementation that you're using, is values, and that will return all of the values. It returns it as the type of collection, and then whatever the type of your values are. In this case, they're ints, right? But remember, you're going to have to use the wrapper type for int, which is integer here. All right, so collection integer. And if you look and map at the values, which is at the very bottom, right, you can see it returns this type collection, right, and then whatever the type of the values are. And that is just one of these interfaces, right? It's in the that is in the collections framework. Okay, so that's a really generic type of group of objects. No assumptions are made about the order of the collection, if any, or whether it can contain duplicate elements. So it's a really fundamental group of things. All right, so that's how it returns its the values as one of those. And then again, you can just iterate over that using an enhanced for loop again. Okay. All right. And then iterating over both keys and values. All right, so that one is, to me, the trickiest one. You can see it's map.entrySet is the method that we're using in the map class. And so if I look at that, you can see it returns this fairly complicated type, right? So it returns a set, right, of these map entry objects. All right, and those map entry objects are going to have both the key and the value in there. So if you need to iterate over both of those at the same time, that's what it's going to look like, right? So you're going to have to set up this set and then map.entry and then whatever the type of the keys are, whatever the type of the values are, right? And then you can iterate over that as well with the enhanced for loop. The type, though, that you have to have for this variable here in the enhanced for loop is map.entry, again with the type of the keys followed by the type of the values there. All right, and then as you're iterating through that, to get the key out, it's entry.getKey, and then to get the value out, it's entry.getValue with whatever variable you're using in here to iterate, to hold all the values as you iterate over this collection. All right, so it's .getKey.getValue. All right, so a little bit complicated on the iterating over both keys and values, but it's not too bad once you've seen it done. Okay. All right, and so that is it on this particular one, I believe. And I think the next thing that we will do is look at some specific examples.